Hello, and welcome to All of This and More, the podcast for those who delight in exploring the intersections of art, faith, belonging, and wonder. I'm Charlotte Donlon, and I'm so glad you're joining me for this introductory episode for episode 18, which is my conversation with Paul Wilm. I love my conversation with Paul. It's close to my heart because it features an artist who embodies the wild joy and honest uncertainty that comes with a creative life. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Birmingham artist, musician, and radio host Paul Cordes Wilm. Paul's work defies easy categories. It's playful, layered, sometimes hilarious, sometimes haunting. If you've ever seen the artwork for this podcast, you've already had a glimpse into his world. In fact, that piece comes from his series Hybrids and Ghosts, where he reimagines ghosts not as empty sheets, but as patchworks of memory, color, and meaning. Paul's art and approach challenge us to think of ourselves and maybe even our own ghosts as stitched together from all the moments and memories we hold. In our conversation, we talk about Paul's background as a painter, what he calls his bread and butter, and how his process is really a practice in intuitive layering with influences from found wood, weathered posters in India, and the colorful chaos of everyday life in Birmingham and beyond. He shares stories about his projects that are meant to sell and keep the lights on, and the projects that emerge from a place of deeper experimentation and personal inquiry. We also spend some time on his music and his beloved band, Nowhere Squares, which he describes as punk wave. Think punk meets new wave with plenty of catharsis and wild dancing. Paul talks about the healing that happens when people gather for a show and how performing is as much self-help as it is entertainment. We'll hear a bit about his long-running Substrate radio show, Psychic Tuesday, which brings together local musicians, new discoveries, and yes, even psychic requests where listeners send their vibrations for the next song. But this episode goes much deeper than just a list of projects. Paul reflects candidly about the push and pull between creative freedom and the realities of making a living, about embracing impermanence, literally collaborating with time, decay, and the elements by letting unfinished paintings weather outdoors. And he talks about continuing to find joy and possibility in cycles of burnout, rest, and inspiration. There's a tenderness in how Paul describes both the thrill and resistance of returning to creative work, and how sometimes the art that sells and the art that surprises him can both be essential. We delve into some big questions like, what does it mean to live in the moment, to be disrupted, to let yourself and your audience interpret a piece of art each time they see it? How does that algorithm shape our creative lives? And how can we push back with attention, delight, and surprise? You'll hear Paul's thoughts on abstract expressionism, the impact of artists who have influenced him over the years, and why he loves accidental collaboration. And in all of this and more fashion, this episode with Paul also touches on belonging, spirituality, and the lasting impact of formative experiences, from listening to the Beatles as a child, to drawing in church as a way to make it through Sunday Mass, to navigating questions of identity and faith as a gay man raised Catholic. To deepen the experience of this episode and honor the layered, evolving nature of creativity, here are a couple of journaling prompts to support reflection and connection while listening to this episode or afterwards. These prompts invite you to engage with the episode's themes and discover new meaning within your own stories and creative practices. First, there's a prompt on art as a patchwork of memory. I invite you to reflect on a piece of art, written, visual, musical, or otherwise, that feels stitched together from your own personal memories or experiences. Describe what moments or emotions this piece of art contains for you, and journal a bit about how the layers of memory influence how you create and respond in your own life. And here's another prompt on welcoming impermanence in creativity, which is something that Paul and I talk about in our conversation. I invite you to consider a creative work of yours that has changed over time through edits, reinterpretations, or even accidents. Then write about the feelings that arise when you imagine letting your work change, decay, or be completed by time and others. In what ways could inviting impermanence or collaboration with the various elements become part of your creative or spiritual practice? Okay, whether you're an artist, a maker, a lover of music, or simply curious about how creativity weaves together the personal and the universal, this conversation with Paul Wilm is for you. Make yourself comfortable. Join me for a conversation that's unpredictable, layered, and full of possibility.